Okay, so next up we have Hannah's Bend.
Hi, thank you everybody. Thank you Andy, thank you Ellen, thank you ThoughtWorks, thank you all for coming. I'd like, because we're so engaged in the mind, and thank you for the presentation, like the screens. I feel um, our mind is also sort of like a screen, and I like to get us all out of that screen for a few breaths and just focus on our breath and just be our breath for a few breaths. And there's one breathing technique, or like a very simplified version of it. It's just a full deep belly breath, like as deep into the belly as possible, and just to release. So if you wouldn't mind, like just like first breath maybe all together. Inhale, deep inhale, and just to release. And then another one. Thank you. One more. Thank you. And you can do a few more if you like. And and you can keep it going too. And it's very effective. You might maybe notice like a lightheadedness or tingling. So you very effectively change your blood chemistry. And I come back to that later a little bit. I started, I was more interested in painting in the beginning, and in how our mind, or how we form thoughts, and how we think something is actually a symbol. So I started like that, and there are always non-repetitive colors and make-believe circles, so there's never a full circle. And I was fascinated how, like, they're huge, they're wall-sized paintings, how we can be so sure that something is actually there when we have like multiple concepts and interpretations of everything. So I started this, and then I ventured also into kind of an art activism, where we transported parts of tires from an ecological catastrophe of 2 million tires in the Atlantic Ocean into an art gallery, and that raised international awareness. So then after that, here's a video, but I skipped that a little bit for time reasons. I wanted to contribute like to positively. So I advised a graduate program for the University of Michigan and worked with researchers, and we wanted to find a solution for the artificial reef. So in a way, we combined art, activism, science, ecology, and then I became artist in residency, yeah, at the Institute of Neuroscience and quantum physics lab from Benjamin Alleman. I'm very grateful for the support of the University of Oregon, and there we were very explorative, merging art with science as well. And it led to what we call mindful transformative technologies, research and developments in science and art. So looking at how we can benefit from each other. Science, a very, I would call it reductionist view, compartmentalizing things, and then art, a very wholesome view of like the experience of life maybe. And we also wanted to contribute to the research in the fields of computer science, biofeedback and virtual reality, and neuroscience and psychology. So I come back to that in a bit. We started looking at, the goal was to look at visual stimuli and how we like them, how they affect us, because there's so many images on screens and we don't really know what they're actually doing, right? And they're like kind of static. And so we had an EEG study, which was IRB approved. It's like a whole process you need to go through if you run a study. And it was approved, and we showed thousands of images to over 44 participants. And then to look at what kind of images people like, and looking at the brain frequencies and stuff. And then on the weekend, we had the EG lab, because their one lab was a peer-reviewed lab, was about to move to Chicago. So another researcher and I sneaked in there a little bit and used the EG lab for meditation studies, because she was a kind of more, I mean, I'm generalizing, but she was very into material science and very skeptical of meditation. So she said, "Oh, meditate," because I was a yoga instructor there at the time and did a lot of vipassana meditation. So she said, "Oh, meditate in different techniques," and then she just looks at the brain frequencies, and that was very interesting. It turned out they were all very. This was the other one. They were all very different. You see on the left side. So that kind of very surprised her as well as me, and got us to start a study with a very renowned psychologist called Michael Posner, who's one of the most cited psychologists in the 20th century, and he's now 80 or 81 and super brilliant and sharp. So very critical, and it was really interesting to work with him. And then we did an MRI study. So EEG looks at the brain frequencies. It's very in the moment, and MRI is more the blood flow, So we're also looking at how can we use like kind of chi, or it's called life force, or sort of there are different models about that. And can experienced meditators bring a blood flow through their brain? And what we actually saw, and I accidentally ran into somebody from Princeton University, who runs the MRI lab at Princeton and who did a similar study setting, and he also showed that said that people who don't meditate, they activate their, or who are not experienced, or what the actually the participants who he had, they're activating the visual cortex, or like what they imagine something, and the people who are experiencing this, it's just practice basically, they were actually bringing a blood flow through their brain. So that was very interesting, and I thought, how can we combine this with art and technology and science? So we published a paper, and that was published at Stanford. I'm really proud of putting the University of Oregon logo next to the Michigan logo to create an and then, yay, we got that at Stanford, and then we won Best Presentation Award there. We're very grateful for that. And yeah, but still, we work with the University of Michigan there, with researchers there. A bunch of academic presentations all over in Helsinki, Science of Consciousness, and other. And then, yeah, we worked on a virtual reality program, because I found, well, if it's so immersive, virtual reality. And also one thing which led to there, that I was at a virtual reality conference in the Bay Area, and I found, wow, there are a lot of people who identify with being male probably, and gamers. So the next technology, AR, VR, will probably develop based on what they like, which is of course maybe not bad, but it's like it might be a lot of like dopamine drive, visual cortex, sensation seeking, instant gratification. And this sounds a little bit labeling, but I found like there was a little bit of lack of a wholesome approach. So how can we integrate something more like mindfulness in there, and then looking at maybe that's actually as beneficial and as appealing to people, and maybe even healthier. So we called it, it's very complicated here, with real-time biofeedback of individualized visualization. So visualizing and sonifying, maybe making the audio of the user's psychophysiology, like sounds very sciencey, but basically just like the body, how somebody feels in a way, through adaptive algorithms to hopefully like calmer and healthier and happier lifestyles and beings using technology, right? So we created this mindful virtual reality program, and that we also presented at Stanford, where you had a heart rate biofeedback, a sensor, and so you can see your heart rate visualized. And we also presented it here, and some younger people said they changed their thoughts, and they noticed that their heart rate was becoming calmer with nicer thoughts. So it's very simple in a way, and we wanted to expand on that. We also visualized like nanoscale microscopy in there, in VR. So and we called it adaptive interfaces, to explore VR, AI, human-machine interactions for interactive experiences of dynamic environments. So basically, when we interact with a screen, so how can it become more adaptive to our current situation, instead of, I argue that there's like team of programmers somewhere, and they created very static, or like they created based on their preferences, and then we can click on something, but it's very driven by our visual cortex and about what we like or prefer, what we're already used to. So it's kind of behavior with behavior, and I don't think behaviorism has gone so far, but I mean, it's nice to include consciousness in a way. So basically bridging also how AI can connect with the human subconsciousness and consciousness. And what does that mean, consciousness and subconscious? I became very interested in study using breath techniques, because there are so many interpretations with brain frequencies. I don't know if you read like some neuroscience studies, there's always like theta, like alpha, and then there's a bunch of different concepts all around that. So what is like a really wholesome thing we all share, no matter the language or something, is breath. And breath is so integrated in all kinds of religious practices and running, wherever it is. If we become aware of our breath, that's a very helpful tool, or like a very helpful state to calm down. And there's one guy, he's called the Iceman, and Tumo Wim Hof, he kind of simplified it in a way. And then there's decades or like thousands of years of Tumo meditation and other practices. So they're very effective in becoming aware of our breath almost all the time, and then also learning how to warm up the body temperature, not get cold anymore, and basically how to kind of be health preventative versus health caring afterwards when we get sick. So not getting sick at all anymore. And I found that very effective, and everybody can learn it, very simple. And it was mind-boggling for me, that study, because people were able to learn the breathing techniques in 4 days, and then they injected people in a peer-reviewed study with E. coli bacteria, and it's very hard if we get injected with E. coli bacteria to fight that. And basically everybody else who didn't do the breathing were wiped out, and the organs get a little bit affected. So yeah, it was like hopefully they got compensated very well. But everybody, but everybody who did the breathing technique, they were all fine, and it was like 100% success, and that was so impressive. I found that that got me really more into biofeedback and how can we learn about the breath. And then also, which was very inspiring, that I work with kids at a summer camp, and I said like, hey, you can try out the virtual reality headset, or we can do breathing techniques or eye gazing and ice cold immersion, and they all opted for the breathing techniques and the cold immersion and Tai Chi practices. So I truly believe what Mantak Chia and other people have been saying, that every technology in a way is an enhancement of what we are already capable of experiencing ourselves, if we have like the right practices in a way. And that was so gratifying and so motivating to see that, and got me actually more into VR and AR. So because how can we bring those techniques when they're so interesting for kids and into our daily lives, using all those new technologies. And some of the kids were labeled with ADHD, and they were holding their breath for a few minutes with those techniques and very focused on it, and they came back and did it at their room. So that was so inspiring, that the kids with ADHD were still for a few minutes, and like meditation weren't so helpful because they were still like opening their eyes here and there. So and then there are all this fascinating studies. Slow breathing induces tranquility. Actually, I don't know if you guys know that. I just learned about that. That came out a few months ago, actually. I think earlier this year, that we lose most of our body fat through breathing. So, yeah, right. That's really interesting. So, yeah. And then also, what they just found that right now it was in mouse lungs that probably our lungs too. They're producing a certain component of our blood. So our lungs are also, producing our blood. So there's a totally new function in science model now of our lungs, which just needs to get into the textbooks as well. And then the rhythm of breathing affects memory and fear. So the longer you breathe, if you had a very deep, long inhale, if you do that more often, you might feel like memories or anxiety or euphoria, because all this, like there's in sync in the limbic system. And then a scientist said he discovered that we have a magnetic sixth sense, and there's a thousands or 6 digits or $1 million research at Caltech University. So that was a top article actually almost a year ago. So the hypothesis that our primal sense might be to detect each other's electromagnetic fields. So also, I mean, right now they're studying how can they do that, and we might just forgotten about it, and kids can learn that right away, or maybe have that, not learn it, they just have it, and we just like decondition ourselves in a way. So it's very interesting, like, to see how that research goes. And one of the projects we also been exploring here at ThoughtWorks the past months was with Julian Help there, he's in the back, and Louis Gaselovitz, he's at Lucasfilms, so he works on the Star Wars movies and stuff. And that one is called Biofields, and then come back to the other one later, VR Biofields. So how can we learn from those studies and from biosensors to integrate them into technology and to kind of retrain ourselves again to experience our electromagnetic fields, other people's electromagnetic fields, and basically, and that's probably also health related. So that's one one project. I go a little bit faster through it. I mean, I'm happy to share the slides if you want to come to me afterwards. And there's a link. And here you can see the. Maybe turn off the audio for this. We just used a simple airflow sensor to connect it with like chakra visualization. So it's very speculative, this project, but that's you see the back room there. So deeper breathing might go more to activation of like the lower belly chakra, but whoops, I wonder how to. Yeah, that's all called a little bit more speculative, because we're still like looking at the latest scientific studies and the biosensors, and we got a sensor kit here. Thank you again, Alan and Andy, for getting that. It's called MySignals e-health platform, also used for medical applications. About 15 to 20 biosensors, and they use airflow or heart rate variability, muscle tension, and we try it out a lot. But then actually we found, yeah, my collaborators Maria and Gordy, they're very brilliant, and they reversed engineered a controller of a virtual reality headset to detect breathing patterns. So what you see there at the bottom left is a kid, and that's called a seeing breath. So what we did here as well, what we keep doing is a project integrating, combining already breath biofeedback and activism and scientific research. And we call that embodied education or embodied learning, because I feel if we engage our body into something and we learn something, it might go deeper into our memory. Also based on the studies I mentioned earlier on memory and breath connection. So right now, actually, there's a presentation tonight in Miami at a museum where we present this, and people can learn about sea level rise. So in a short sentence, we say learning how our well-being is intertwined with the well-being of the planet and of the ocean. I can show a little trailer. There's another video. This is a breath sensor. This is how we experimented here as well at ThoughtWorks. So it's the controller of the virtual reality headset is in here, and then it detects the belly movement. And so right now we're working on the refinement of the algorithms. And here's a trailer. Maybe we can have some sound for this.
Problem now. It's been handed down to us from the older generation. They don't see any way that they can fix it anymore, so it's all up to us.
What will happen with the sea levels rising? Hey, wanna breathe with me? Clear the bubbles with your breath.
It was really cool because, like, it was controlled by my breathing, and when I breathed, I felt like relaxed.
Deep inhale, long exhale.
I was doing that.
I am Belly. They named me Belly because I breathe into my belly all the time. Please look around for a few minutes. Sense the beach with your breath.
And I was lucky enough to experience the VR device, and I think it's great. I liked how it started at the beginning with the breathing exercises.
What will happen when the sea levels keep rising? We're covered in water. We have to hide. Today, sea level is approximately 6 to 8 inches higher on average than it was in 1900. In the short term, sea level rise is projected to be 6 to 10 inches by 2030.
Well, I didn't know if the water temperature and height was changing much.
Almost there. You can do it.
It was like fun. I didn't know what was gonna happen next, and then it really surprised me when the water rose because I didn't know what was going on, and then I had to drain all the water with my belly.
To make a connection between breathing planet, breathing ocean, and breathing yourself is also very important.
Ways that sea level rise happens, the kind of famous one is glaciers melting, right? And so far that's caused like a little bit of sea level rise.
So my name is Delaney, and I am the founder and CEO of the Sink or Swim Project, which is an educational and political advocacy initiative that is focused on solving climate change.
I think it's definitely good for all ages. As an adult, I'm able to get the information out of it, and I was able to see how the kids interacted with it.
I think it's really cool, and I have not seen that before, but it could really help help the people to learn about sea level rise and the implications.
I like it. I would do it every day. It was amazing.
It was fun?
Yeah, I just want to do it again.
Yeah?
Let me do it again.
That's been still presented at different museums, and we got invited to Frost Science Museum and PAM Museum in Miami, the most renowned museums right now there. So it's very humbling to be part of that and to explore embodied education and how can we expand biosensor integration. We didn't want to present it to kids under 13, but then the parents were open to that, and it was nice to see that kids at the age of 3 or something were bringing awareness to their breath for the first time, and some of them learned about breathing, about like sea level rise for the first time. So I don't know about Florida, there might be like different emphasis on education. So it's really important, it seems, in the Miami community also to spread that, and so we got a lot of support for that. And then just briefly, because we're finishing up, if you want to add us, we like have an Instagram account. It's called Seeing Breath, SEA, like the ocean, sea. And then, yeah, we presented at those venues so far. And here you see Julian in the back, who's been developing a heart rate biofeedback. You look at screens, and they become adaptive, looking at heart rate there. Yeah, I mean, we can talk about it later. Just briefly here, this is a radar sensor we've also been exploring. So here's the sensor in the front here, and you see, and it detects his breathing just through simple chest movement. So that's one we're exploring the latest sensors. This is one from a Norwegian company. So how can different sensors be integrated in screens, in any kind of screens, mobile as mentioned earlier, and how can we learn through VR and these experiences? So here you see, the curve, like there's like the lengths. So it's very simple in a way. It uses the gyroscope or like spatial movement, but I also read a few days ago that the new iPhone might come out with a laser sensor. And so it's just basically in a way a matter like with depths. So it's probably just a refinement of machine learning and noise reduction to see which user is like which breath patterns are of each user when somebody else picks up one's phone, and then we call it adaptive interfaces. Yeah, so there's a connection between the biosensor platforms and the different types, and we call it adaptive interfaces. The detection, first of all, and so right now we're working on the display of the different elements, colors, forms, and audio. So just like a very simple, it might take a bit longer, the experience, but then how the screen's life can become adaptive. So ideal, and then how it becomes aligned. So the breathing becomes in sync with the visual and audio, and how can we develop an interface which can be, you can turn it on or off on your device, and then it uses the depth sensor. And when you look at whatever it is, a social media platform, it's not blue anymore or white, or it becomes adaptive to what color might guide you to a deeper breathing, or like kind of in sync lead you to deeper breathing. And so if somebody wants to use Twitter and they're kind of angry or something, it might change the font size and change the color, so somebody might like breathe a little bit deeper and send maybe like kinder text or like tweet or something. So that, it's like the harshest example, but so like the short-term goal is integrating biosensors into screen-based environments, and then long-term goals is like this adaptive interfaces. And maybe here is like a fun setting. We just did that a few days ago at a. I had this. Whoops! I had this like head cap on, and then a psychiatrist who runs a neurofeedback clinic. He maybe can turn this a little louder. He asked me to breathe in different technique, or just like simple baseline. This is at the bottom left, and he talks a little bit about it. It's funny, so maybe just a few seconds. And then I was doing the breathing technique, and then there was a breath holding for one specific breathing technique. Here's a funny explanation.
This is very impressive. This is like someone who has taken marijuana.
Yeah.
Your neutral state is like you are intoxicated. You should keep on breathing. This is what you meditative breathing, and this is a breath hold.
So that was really interesting to see it. I was there with Maria and Gordy, my collaborators, and to see that how brain frequencies change so fast and he said it was like one standard deviation difference, which is very significant. So so we keep working on it. It's like a matter of refinement, and how can we integrate it in public art experiences and any kind of technology. So we're grateful. We're very open to work with anybody who feels they can contribute, or just to share and to test out things. And yeah, thank you all. Thank you, Leseg.
Okay, so why we're changing, we have
meow. It's, you know, it's spelled M-I-N, but it's pronounced meow. So it's meow. It's hard for me. And I met Meow when, you know, I went to the ITP graduate show. And, you know, I usually go to the ITP and the Parsons graduate shows. And, you know, I troll, like, see, all right, who's doing what? And she so impressed me with the work she was doing with AR. And I thought it was really dealing with issues that are on the forefront. So you're in your second year now at ITP? Going into second. So she's a first